Lila had always loved early mornings, the way sunlight spilled softly across the kitchen tiles, the quiet hum of the house before anyone else stirred, and the faint, comforting aroma of coffee that seemed to promise peace before the chaos of the day began. But today felt different, an unspoken tension floating in the air that made her pause at the doorway, her hand resting on the cool countertop as she tried to steady her racing thoughts, and that's when she saw Emma, her stepsister, standing there as if she had been waiting, her eyes unusually serious, not the playful, teasing ones Lila had grown used to over the years, and for a moment everything else faded, the hum of the refrigerator, the birds outside. Even the sunlight itself seemed to dim, leaving only the two of them in a quiet, charged space that neither had expected, and Lila felt a strange flutter in her chest, a mix of curiosity and caution, because Emma's presence had always been comforting, sometimes frustrating, often funny, but today carried a weight Lila couldn't name, a subtle shift in the air that hinted at emotions unspoken, feelings that lingered just beneath the surface, and she remembered all the small moments that had built up over time. The lingering looks when no one was watching, the shared laughter over silly things, the quiet evenings when they sat near each other reading or sipping tea, moments that had always felt innocent, familiar, yet now seemed layered with something more complicated, more urgent, as if the walls themselves had started to whisper secrets, and Lila realized she had noticed Emma's change before anyone else, the way her laughter sometimes caught, the way her gaze held a hint of something she wasn't ready to reveal, and now, standing in the soft morning light, Lila could feel the pull between them, a magnetic tension that was impossible to ignore, stirring something deep inside her she had tried to suppress, and Emma's voice broke the silence, gentle yet firm, asking a question that made Lila's heart skip. Do you ever feel like we're holding back? And the words hung between them, fragile and raw, leaving Lila speechless, caught between the familiar comfort of family and the thrilling, terrifying possibility that things were about to change. And as Emma's gaze searched hers, tender yet full of an unspoken longing, Lila realized the kitchen, the house, even the quiet morning itself had become a threshold, a place where something unnameable was stirring. And for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a world where their relationship wasn't just defined by rules or family bonds, but by emotions too powerful to ignore. A world where the ordinary safety of home collided with the extraordinary intensity of feelings neither was ready to fully understand. And in that moment, Lila knew that this morning, this simple, quiet kitchen, would mark the beginning of a change that neither of them could foresee, a change that carried the weight of desire, confusion, hope, and fear all at once. And as Emma shifted slightly, brushing her hand near Lila's on the counter, the contact electric and fleeting, Lila's mind raced with questions and possibilities, the kind that make hearts pound and leave a person on the edge of discovery, because she understood, even if she couldn't fully name it yet, that their lives, their closeness, and the boundaries they had always taken for granted, were about to be tested in ways neither of them could have imagined. And as sunlight pooled around them, painting the kitchen in warm golden tones, Lila felt a thrill of anticipation mixed with dread, a cocktail of emotions that left her breathless and acutely aware of every detail, the slight tremor in Emma's hand, the nervous flutter in her own chest, the way the coffee steam swirled between them like a quiet witness, and she realized, with both fear and fascination, that today, everything familiar was quietly unraveling, making space for something new, delicate, and intense, a story that had been waiting to begin. Without either of them fully realizing it, and as Lila took a deep breath, she understood that life had a way of changing in the smallest spaces, the briefest moments, and right now, in this kitchen filled with sunlight, silence, and unspoken emotion, she and Emma were standing on the edge of a moment that could redefine their world, and though uncertainty loomed like a shadow, Lila's heart felt strangely alive, aware that whatever happened next would be unforgettable, shaping the bond between them in ways they had never anticipated. And in that quiet, still morning, with only the soft hum of the house around them, Lila allowed herself to hope, to fear, and to wonder, all at the same time, because she knew that once the first word was spoken, the first glance held too long, the first brush of hands that lingered, nothing could ever go back to the way it had been, and the kitchen, which had always been a simple, ordinary part of their home, now felt like the stage of a story that was just beginning, a story full of heart, longing, and the quiet intensity of emotions too powerful to remain hidden. Emma's words lingered in the air like a fragile glass that could shatter at any moment. Do you ever feel like we're holding back? And Lila's heart caught, a sudden rush of warmth and confusion sweeping through her chest, making her feel both alive and vulnerable at the same time, and she hesitated, unsure whether to laugh it off, ignore it, or speak honestly, because Emma's question carried a weight neither of them had ever dared put into words, a delicate mix of longing, fear, and unspoken truth, and Lila could see it in Emma's eyes, that quiet, searching look full of curiosity and quiet desperation, a need to be understood that mirrored her own feelings, and the kitchen around them, the familiar tiles, the sunlight spilling across the counters, the faint smell of coffee, suddenly seemed charged with tension, a place where ordinary life had paused to make room for something extraordinary, something that neither family rules nor societal expectations could contain, and Lila's mind raced with memories, all the small moments she had shared with Emma over the years, the teasing laughter during breakfast, the way they had shared secrets late at night, the comfort of silent companionship that had always felt natural, safe, familiar, and now those memories felt different, tinged with a new energy, a kind of quiet electricity that made her pulse quicken and her stomach flutter, and Emma took a step closer, and for the first time, Lila noticed the subtle changes, the way her shoulders relaxed, the slight tremor in her hands, the way her eyes lingered on Lila's face, and she realized that Emma's presence was no longer just familiar, it was magnetic, drawing her in with an intensity she hadn't fully acknowledged before, and Lila felt herself teetering on the edge of discovery, caught between the comfort of family and the dangerous thrill of desire, a line she had never considered crossing suddenly glowing in front of her like a path she couldn't resist following, and Emma's voice softened, almost a whisper, carrying a vulnerability that made Lila ache inside. Sometimes I feel like we're more than just family. And those words, so gentle yet loaded with meaning, hit Lila like a wave she had no choice but to ride, because deep down, she had felt the same, had wondered if the closeness she shared with Emma was something more, something complicated, and now hearing it spoken aloud made the possibility real, terrifying, and irresistible all at once, and Lila struggled to find the right words, to respond without breaking the fragile moment, because every glance, every breath, every subtle shift between them seemed amplified, as if the universe itself had slowed down to witness the beginning of a transformation neither could stop, and she saw the tiniest tremor in Emma's lip, the way her hands clenched slightly at her sides, and Lila realized that Emma was just as scared as she was, scared of crossing boundaries, scared of what their family would think, scared of admitting that the line between love and family had blurred in a way neither could ignore, and yet, in that same instant, Lila felt a surge of courage, a desire to meet Emma halfway, to acknowledge the connection that had grown quietly between them over time, unspoken but undeniable, a connection that made every shared smile, every brush of hands, every whispered secret, feel like part of a story they were writing together, a story that defied rules and expectations, a story filled with longing, tenderness, and the kind of emotional intimacy that left the heart aching and the soul yearning for more. And as they stood in the kitchen, sunlight glinting off the counters, the faint hum of morning filling the room, Lila felt a magnetic pull, a recognition that everything they had felt, everything they had avoided speaking, was now surfacing, raw and vivid, and she reached out instinctively, her fingers brushing against Emma's arm, and the contact, so simple, so fleeting, sent shivers through both of them, and Emma's eyes widened, a mixture of surprise, desire, and fear flickering across her face, and Lila's breath caught in her throat, because in that instant, she realized that what they were experiencing could not be contained, could not be ignored, and that the path ahead would be uncertain, delicate, and full of moments that would test their courage, their loyalty, and their hearts, and yet she also knew, with a quiet certainty, that this moment, this unspoken acknowledgement of their feelings, this shared vulnerability, was a gift, a chance to explore a connection that was rare, profound, and deeply human, and as Emma's gaze softened, meeting hers with a tenderness that made Lila's chest ache, she understood that the rest of the world could wait, that for now, in this quiet kitchen filled with sunlight, coffee, and possibility, they had found a space where truth could exist. Unafraid, unjudged, and full of the potential for love, heartbreak, and everything in between, and in that charged, fragile silence, Lila felt both terrified and exhilarated, aware that the next word, the next look, the next touch could change everything. And she also knew that once they took that step, once they let themselves feel what had been quietly growing, there would be no going back, only forward, into a world where family, desire, and longing intertwined in ways neither of them had imagined. And as Emma took another hesitant step closer, her fingers brushing lightly against the edge of Lila's hand, Lila felt a thrill of anticipation, a dizzying mix of fear and hope, because she knew that whatever came next, their lives had shifted, subtly at first, then irrevocably, and that the quiet morning, the ordinary kitchen, and the simple act of speaking the truth out loud had opened the door to a story neither of them could have predicted, a story full of emotion, romance, and dramatic tension, a story that would test their hearts, challenge their assumptions, and ultimately reveal the depth of connection that had always been there, waiting for the courage to be seen, acknowledged, and embraced. And in that moment, Lila and Emma both understood that the journey ahead would be delicate, unpredictable, and beautiful, because sometimes, the quietest moments carry the loudest truths, and the most ordinary mornings can become the beginning of an extraordinary story that neither could have imagined, a story that would unfold slowly, intimately, and with every heartbeat, right there in the soft, sunlit kitchen where everything had started. The days that followed were a whirlwind of tension and unspoken emotion, every glance between Lila and Emma carrying the weight of the words they had shared in the kitchen, and though they tried to go about their daily routines as if nothing had changed, the atmosphere was charged, electric, like the calm before a storm. Because now even the smallest interactions held new meaning, the brush of a hand while passing a plate, the shared laughter over a joke, the quiet moments of sitting together in the living room, all seemed to hum with unacknowledged desire and the thrill of forbidden intimacy. And Lila found herself thinking about Emma constantly, imagining the warmth of her touch, the softness of her gaze, and feeling a pull she couldn't deny, a magnetic attraction that was at once terrifying and irresistible. And Emma, too, moved through the house with a subtle tension, her movements more aware, her laughter tinged with a sweetness that seemed directed at Lila alone, and neither of them could ignore the fact that the bond between them had deepened, transformed into something complicated, layered, and powerful, something that neither family rules nor their own hesitation could erase. And one evening, the house quiet as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lila found herself in the kitchen again, cleaning dishes side by side with Emma, and the familiarity of the task made the intensity between them almost unbearable. Their hands brushed repeatedly, small sparks igniting with each contact, and the rhythm of the chores became a dance neither had rehearsed, a silent acknowledgement of what simmered beneath the surface. And Lila noticed the way Emma's shoulders relaxed only slightly when she was near, the way her lips parted in soft, hesitant breaths, the way her eyes met Lila's with a mixture of longing, fear, and hope. And Lila herself felt a dizzying blend of excitement and guilt, knowing that they were treading a line that felt both thrilling and dangerous. And as the kitchen grew dim with the last light of day, Emma's voice broke the quiet, low and trembling, "I can't pretend anymore." And Lila's heart lurched, because those words were both a confession and an invitation, a signal that the boundary they had both respected for so long had begun to dissolve, leaving them exposed, vulnerable, and entirely present with one another. And in that charged moment, Lila realized that the kitchen, once a place of routine and comfort, had become a stage for something entirely new, a place where emotions could no longer hide. And Emma's hand, brushing slightly against hers as they reached for the same dish, sent a jolt through her that made it impossible to think of anything else. And the world outside the kitchen, the rest of the house, their family, the familiar rules of life, seemed to recede, leaving only the two of them, suspended in a fragile, intimate bubble where every glance, every breath, every subtle movement carried unspoken messages, messages of desire, curiosity, and the quiet acknowledgement that they were exploring a connection that had always existed, waiting for them to notice it, to embrace it. And even though Lila's mind raced with questions, doubts, and fears, there was an undeniable thrill in surrendering to the moment, in allowing herself to feel the intensity between them without shame or hesitation. And Emma's eyes, soft yet imploring, held a mixture of hope and trepidation that mirrored Lila's own. And in the hush of the kitchen, as dishes were stacked and water dripped into the sink, time seemed to slow, the air thick with anticipation, and Lila felt the unmistakable pull of intimacy. A closeness that went beyond family, beyond friendship, into a realm of tender vulnerability and longing that neither had dared acknowledge before, and she knew that they were both aware of the consequences, the uncertainty, the potential for heartbreak or misunderstanding, yet the gravity of the attraction between them made every risk feel worthwhile, as if life itself had condensed into these small, electric moments, where a hand held too long or a glance that lingered could speak louder than words. And as Emma leaned slightly closer to reach for a glass, their arms touched, the contact lingering just a heartbeat longer than necessary. And that simple touch was enough to ignite a cascade of emotion, leaving them both breathless and acutely aware of how deeply they had been drawn together, and Lila found herself imagining the future, wondering how they would navigate this new closeness, how their relationship would evolve, whether their hearts could withstand the intensity of what was awakening between them. And yet, despite the fear, there was exhilaration, a sense of being fully alive in a way neither had experienced before, because love, desire, and longing had a way of making the ordinary extraordinary, the mundane charged with meaning, and Emma's voice, soft but trembling, murmured something about not wanting to hide anymore, and Lila felt tears prick her eyes, not of sorrow but of the profound recognition that their bond had deepened into something rare and powerful, something that could transform both their lives if they allowed it to. And as the sun set completely and the room darkened, the kitchen lights casting gentle shadows around them, they both realized that the unspoken had become spoken, the tension resolved into understanding, the attraction acknowledged without fear, and in that delicate balance of longing, uncertainty, and acceptance, they discovered a new rhythm, a new connection that was at once fragile and enduring, a dance of hearts and emotions that neither had expected but both had secretly hoped for. And as they finished the chores, their hands brushing occasionally, their eyes meeting and holding for long, quiet seconds, Lila felt a profound certainty, whatever happened next, whatever choices they made, the bond between them had shifted irrevocably, blossoming into an intimacy that was emotional, romantic, and deeply human. And though the path forward was uncertain, fraught with possible complications and quiet fears, it was also filled with possibility, tenderness, and a kind of beauty that only emerges when two people allow themselves to feel completely, honestly, and without reservation. And in the hush of the evening, with only the gentle hum of the house around them, they stood together in the kitchen, side by side, hearts racing, emotions raw, and minds alive with the thrill of a connection that promised heartbreak, longing, joy, and the slow, intoxicating pull of something unforgettable. And they both knew that this was only the beginning, that life had irrevocably shifted between them, and that the kitchen, the home, and their very sense of what was possible in love and family had changed forever, quietly, dramatically, and beautifully. After that evening in the kitchen, life did not explode into chaos, but it didn't stay the same either. Everything felt different, a subtle shift that both Lila and Emma could sense, like a quiet current running beneath their everyday routines. And suddenly every glance, every touch, every shared laugh carried weight and meaning that neither could ignore. And though they tried to act normal around their family, their connection pulsed quietly beneath the surface, creating moments of stolen smiles, soft touches that lingered a second too long, and conversations that drifted toward personal thoughts and feelings, a gentle intimacy that was both comforting and thrilling. And Lila discovered that she had been craving this closeness, this emotional honesty, even if it had scared her at first, because Emma's presence now stirred something deeper, a longing that went beyond friendship, beyond family, into a place of tender, complicated affection that neither of them had named before but both could feel. And Emma herself seemed changed, lighter in her laughter, warmer in her touch, more open in the small ways she shared herself, the quiet shift in her demeanor reflecting the unspoken understanding between them, the new rhythm of their bond. And together they learned to navigate this delicate balance, aware of boundaries yet embracing the subtle intimacy that had blossomed, moments like making breakfast together, exchanging glances across the table, leaning close to hear a whispered comment, all carrying a thrill and a tenderness that made everyday life extraordinary. And every time their hands brushed, lingered near each other's, or their eyes met in private corners of the house, it was a quiet acknowledgement of connection, a language all their own, full of nuance and emotion. And Lila found herself reflecting on how far they had come, from the initial spark of recognition in the morning kitchen, to the confessions that had opened the door to this emotional closeness. to the ongoing dance of feelings that now defined their days, and though there were moments of uncertainty, moments when fear of misunderstanding or guilt crept in, those were tempered by the joy of understanding each other deeply, of sharing unspoken fears and quiet hopes, of laughing together over trivial things that suddenly felt meaningful because they were shared, and as they moved through the days, learning to balance ordinary family life with the extraordinary emotional intimacy they had discovered, Lila realized that love and affection were not always simple or easy, but they were profoundly human, full of contradictions, risk, and beauty. And Emma's gentle presence became a source of comfort, inspiration, and sometimes an ache of longing that reminded Lila how alive emotions could make her feel. And every quiet evening spent side by side in the living room, every moment in the kitchen filled with small touches and meaningful looks, became a testament to a bond that had grown stronger and more intricate than either had expected, a bond that required courage, honesty, and vulnerability, and yet gave back a sense of fulfillment and warmth unmatched by anything they had experienced before. And as the seasons shifted, the house filled with the golden glow of sunlight or the soft hush of evening, they continued to navigate this closeness with care, learning each day how to communicate, how to understand, and how to hold each other's hearts gently while honoring the world outside their connection. And sometimes they sat together silently, hands almost touching, hearts beating in sync, aware that the intensity of their emotions did not need to be spoken aloud to exist, that the quiet comfort of shared presence carried its own powerful meaning. And in those moments, Lila realized that life had a way of giving unexpected gifts, of creating beauty from complexity, of teaching that love can take many forms, delicate, mature, tender, and all-encompassing. And Emma's eyes, soft and sincere, often held a question and an answer all at once, asking for acceptance, giving reassurance, reflecting a depth of feeling that matched Lila's own. And the way they learned to trust each other, to share their fears, joys, and quiet desires, strengthened their bond in ways that felt sacred and profound, as if the universe had conspired to bring them together in this unique and extraordinary emotional space. And even when challenges arose, moments of tension, or fear of being misunderstood by others, they faced them together, their closeness acting as a shield and a comfort, giving them courage to continue, to embrace the complexity of what they felt, and to honor the connection that had transformed ordinary life into something remarkable, filled with emotional richness, quiet romance, and a tender, unspoken understanding. And as they moved through the months, learning how to live with this bond that was both delicate and powerful, Lila often paused to appreciate the small details, the way Emma's smile could light a room, the warmth of her hand in a fleeting touch, the softness of her voice in quiet moments, the laughter they shared that carried new layers of meaning. And she understood that these moments were not accidents but the result of a connection that had grown deliberately, carefully, and beautifully over time, a bond that taught patience, courage, and the importance of honesty with one's heart. And she felt a deep sense of gratitude, awe, and hope, because what they shared was rare, complicated, and profoundly human, a story of hearts learning to open, trust, and embrace the possibilities of love and affection in their purest, most heartfelt form. And as they stood together in the kitchen one quiet evening, sunlight spilling softly across the counters, hands almost touching again, their hearts beating in a rhythm all their own, Lila realized that the choice Emma had made, that first quiet step toward honesty, had indeed changed everything. It had transformed their family dynamic. Yes, but more importantly, it had transformed them, opening a door to emotional intimacy, trust, and love that neither could have anticipated, a love that was gentle, mature, and deeply stirring. And as they shared that quiet space, with nothing but soft light, the hum of the house, and the warmth of understanding between them, Lila knew that life had gifted them something extraordinary, a connection that would grow, adapt, and endure, a story of hearts entwined in tender, quiet romance, full of longing, hope, and the beauty of emotions bravely felt, fully lived, and lovingly shared. And she smiled softly, aware that while challenges and uncertainties lay ahead, the journey they had begun together was worth every risk, every heartbeat, and every moment of quiet, profound connection, because they had discovered something rare, beautiful, and enduring, something that made life richer, fuller, and infinitely more meaningful. And in that golden, sunlit kitchen, Lila and Emma stood side by side, hearts aligned in a rhythm only they understood, ready to face whatever came next together, secure in the knowledge that the bond they shared was extraordinary, delicate, and everlasting.